good morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this.
Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast.
From a complete nobody, that is hopefully for somebody.
I am your host, Kyle Naranya, today joined by a special returning guest. Why don't you tell everybody your name?
My name is Melody. Today we are reviewing Trolls Band Together.
As for all of the feature film reviews, there will be a non-spoiler section of the podcast where we just give general feelings. Melody may be a part of the non-spoilers, but I know she's really looking forward to talking in the spoilers where we can talk about character plot points, any spoilers that aren't in the trailers. There will be time codes listed in the description, so I don't want to waste any of your time or any of Melody's time. Let's start reviewing Trolls Band Together. As mentioned already, this is the third film in the Trolls trilogy. I think it is kind of crazy that we've had 3 Trolls films. They are a brand of children's films that I think generally are well received. While I know on this podcast I've been critical of children/family pictures that are lacking the substance of something like a Pixar or a Walt Disney animation project, I'm going to try to be a little more optimistic, and so Melody decided she wanted to talk about more specific details, so she's taking a break. You good, Melody?
Yeah.
Okay, she'll be back for spoilers. And so, overall, I think the film is quite fun. I've always been somebody who has enjoyed the Jukebox musical. Did you like the music?
Yeah.
Yeah, we like the music. We can talk about what your favorite song is later, okay? Okay, sounds good. And so that's an element that I always enjoyed for this, particularly adding a lot of backstory to the Trolls was something quite fun. We know that in the trailers we get to see Branch was part of a boy band, and that adds a lot of history to his relationships, particularly one with music. And the relationship between Poppy and, again, did we see this in the trailers, Melody, that she had a sister? Was that in the trailers? Do you remember? Yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay, high five. Boom, thanks. Anyways, so we did get to see some of those elements. I think the movie is quite fun. It is very predictable, and one of the aspects that I was a little disappointed by was the overall goal of the film is what the brothers are going to do, and given the fact that we know Poppy has a sister, there doesn't really seem to be a connection between the two families reuniting, which is slightly disappointing. I'm not going to consider that a spoiler because it doesn't happen. Overall, these films, ironically, with something that is Trolls and colorful and fun, it is candy, it is entertainment, it is enjoyable. It does not have the level of depth that you would get from something like a Pixar film. And so for that, you're just kind of along for the ride, enjoying kind of just an entertainment of a wide variety of music. As per usual, there's a substantial eclectic use of very different songs, mashups being something that this trilogy is known for in particular. I liked the film. I don't think either of the sequels has been able to nail what necessarily worked about the first one. I enjoyed this one more so than Trolls 2. One of the aspects I found really weird, and Melody, you can talk to me about this, the world is very strange. We had Trolls, and we had, what are they called, Birkins? Bergens? And so we had that in the first film, and without getting into specific details, we get a lot of other stuff. And I know that this is a high fantasy universe where like a lot of things can happen, and the colorful, fun, zany nature is what works for these films. But I found it quite overwhelming, and at times not really sure what the rules of the universe were. And so we get a lot of different beings. And so that part I found kind of underdeveloped. Overall, we don't get to really explore the relationship between Branch and Princess Poppy as much as we did in the previous two. The relationship is not really touched on at all. It's more so about all the new characters. And given how we are given so many, the brothers don't really have unique personalities, ironically, outside of specific roles that they were in the boy band and how they go against that. And I think that is fun, but given the quantity of new characters, we don't get to focus on anyone in particular. And overall, I just don't think this has as much to say that the previous one did, and even Trolls World Tour. And so it's fine. I think if you like this world and you like the, not, I don't want to say shallow, but the fun, family friendly nature of these films, you're in for a good time. At the end of our screening, there were a couple of kids who were even dancing during the credits, which was quite fun. Of course, this movie has a new NSYNC song, and if you grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, that is something that is quite special, and it's fun to hear all those voices and talented singers singing together again. Outside of that, I don't really think this offers anything new that we hadn't seen in the previous ones. So this may sound like a criticism. It is more Trolls. So if you like more Trolls and you're down for more Trolls, you're going to enjoy more Trolls. Now, obviously, this is not necessarily aimed at somebody who is 32 years old, so I'm not going to waste any more of the non-spoiler time. It's time to bring in the person who wanted to see this movie, my daughter, Melody. All right, so we're in spoiler territory. So, Melody, we are free to talk about anything that happens in the movie. So, if you do not want to be spoiled, you can jump to the outro and find out what's coming in the next episode. But if not, you want to hear us talk about everything that happens, we can now talk about everything that happens. So, we are introduced to all of Branch's siblings. He was part of a boy band, and that is the focus of the film. But as I mentioned in the non-spoilers, I found it funny that given how we are introduced to Poppy's sister and all of Branch's siblings, did you find any of them to be particularly memorable?
Some of his siblings didn't have some of the same agreeables. I don't get the effect of how none of them agree. Some of them do agree. Some of them have different feelings. I don't have the fact of when Branch wears a diaper when he's a big boy.
Oh, did you find that funny when he's wearing a diaper?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did?
It was kind of weird. I didn't know that part of the movie, her sister lived in a clown house. It was kind of weird. I didn't know that it talked either.
Yeah, so that is something that I found really interesting about the movie, is that so Viva, who is Poppy's long-lost older sister, lives in what are they called? Are they Birkins?
Burgundies.
They're not Burgundies. What are they called? They are
Burgund.
Bergens. Here we go. And so it's a golf course that was at once controlled by the Bergens. And obviously, if you've seen the first film, I mean, if you haven't seen any of the two previous films and you're going to see this, I don't really understand. This movie wouldn't make sense if you hadn't seen Trolls 1 or 2, would it?
It would not make any sense because you wouldn't know what it was like. That does make sense if you didn't know what it was like. You should still watch 1, 2, or 3 to learn how it's like in the movie.
Well, and they talk about the first Trolls where the great Bergen something or other, I can't remember even what it's called, but it's Bergens. But we know, so Viva was separated from the king, Peppy, and Poppy at what I'm assuming is happening around the first Trolls, so they never bothered to talk about her. And all the brothers are supposed to do is they're supposed to find perfect harmony, which will eventually free the one brother, Floyd, from the
Diamond trap.
The diamond trap he's in. And one thing I thought was going to happen that didn't was because we had Viva and Poppy, long lost sisters, I thought they were going to be involved with the perfect harmony, but they're not. Right? It's just the brothers.
They weren't going to be in the band, and they were. I thought when Branch asked her if she wanted to do something, I thought he asked, "Do you want to marry me?" But he told her that she knows him well enough that she knew what he was going to say. I thought that she wasn't going to be in the band.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. I'm glad you brought that part up. I mentioned this in the non-spoilers, which is we don't really get a ton of Branch and Poppy building their friendship. Well, they're dating, they're boyfriend-girlfriend. Yes. So we don't really get to see their relationship develop, and I found that to be slightly disappointing. There's a reference at the beginning about them getting married and how that would be weird, but eventually, if they keep being boyfriend and girlfriend, eventually they should get married. And it would have been interesting for the fact that we now have these two long-lost families showing up That don't you think it would make sense for Branch to ask Poppy to marry him at the end of the movie?
Yeah,
But he asks, you said, right? He asks her to be in the band.
yeah, it's kind of weird how I didn't know that the brothers would technically be separated because none of them agreed to stay in the band.
Well, they didn't like John Dory bossing them around.
Yeah, all of them had different feelings to like. At first, their leader decided to separate to go, and then all the other brothers agreed.
Well, they all wanted to do what they wanted to do. They weren't compromising and working as a group. And everybody treated Branch like a baby. It'd be like if we treated you like a baby, but you're not a baby, right? You get to share your opinions on things.
It's like Branch doesn't get to do what he wants because he's a big boy, and they're like, baby something, baby B Branch, and they're calling him what he was in the act, but he doesn't want them to call him that.
Because he's a big boy Branch now.
Yeah. And somebody finally gets him when he is a big boy. And his brother, when he's in the diamond trap, tells him that big boy Branch, and then that's finally when someone gets him.
Oh, and they finally are able to use the perfect harmony to save all of the trolls?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of, what were they called? Veneer and Velvet. Did you think they were good bad guys?
No, but I did like one of their songs. But even though they got arrested, I still like the color of their hair.
Yes, I thought, I don't know if you feel the same. I thought they almost looked like they were made out of licorice. Did you think they looked like that? Yeah, didn't they? Do you think you could eat one of them?
No.
What is their species? It doesn't even say. That's again something I talked about briefly, which is we had trolls, we had Bergens, and then we have whatever Velvet and Veneer are made of. If they're not, so this is not a joke for you, this is for the grown-up listeners. If they're not a reference to Milli Vanilli, then I'd be really disappointed. I thought that Andrew, I want to say it's Rennell's, who plays the brother, was very funny, and I liked how he was just following along what his older sister was doing. Velvet was very bossy to her brother, wasn't she?
She's not. She's trying to change him, but just like all Branch's siblings, the leader that was the oldest is trying to change them when they want to do what they want to do. It's just like Veneer. He wants to do what he wants to do. His sister's trying to change him, and Veneer doesn't want to trap those trolls. She's like, no, we have to trap those trolls.
Velvet says Velvet wants to trap the trolls,
yeah,
right?
Veneer doesn't want to be changed. He just wants to be his own person, like other people want him to. And Velvet's not being very nice about changing him. And finally, one of the trolls gets him, and he's like, don't let Velvet change you. And he had to agree, and he did at the end, and he tells them all what happened in the first place.
So you saw a lot of similarities between Branch's older brothers and Velvet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's true. That is a connection that I had not mentioned earlier. So we talked about all the different music. We talked about this in the car on the ride home. What was your favorite song that the boys sang, or that Brozone sang?
The one, Stay in the Light.
Staying Alive?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mashups in this were good. So I'm curious, Melody, because these films have all kinds of different music. Which of the Trolls movies do you think is your favorite right now? Trolls World Tour, or Trolls Band Together? Which one do you think you like the most, right?
Trolls World Tour.
Really? You like the one with the rock music and the rock troll?
Yeah, because I kind of like rock.
That's true. So that's something I think that Trolls World Tour offers that this one doesn't, which is there's a lot of disco and pop music in Trolls Band Together, but I like some of the rock music in World Tour, and we don't get any of that in Band Together, do we?
No, I like pop music too, so I should like both of them connected, because Me Too is pop, and I like Me Too.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's Trolls music. Some of the Trolls 1 might have some pop music too.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else to say about this. Do you have anything else you want to share about Trolls?
No.
No? Okay. So, Melody, thank you so much for joining the podcast. This one's been quick and brief, but similar to an hour and a half kids film, there's only so much to talk about, all right?
Yeah.
Do you want to say thank you to the listeners?
Thank you for all the listeners who wants to listen to this podcast.
All right. Are you going to hang out with me for the outro?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a jam-packed week. If you are listening to this and you haven't listened to the first episode of this week, I released an episode for a review of The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Coming up this week is a review of Napoleon. I'm hoping to have that out this week if you're listening to this when it launched, Friday. So it's a jam-packed schedule. And then I'm not necessarily sure what's going to be coming out next week. I'm hoping to have Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, and I am also hoping to see Wish. Wish looked pretty good, didn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think people should go see Wish?
Yes.
Would you recommend people go see Trolls Band Together?
Yes.
Yes, you would? Okay. So thank you to Melody for joining me. Thank you again for listening to the podcast. As always, please like and share the podcast with your film friends. I don't know why I struggled with that. It's been a long day. Also, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you were listening on Spotify, there's a question embedded in every episode, and your answers and responses will be reacted to on the podcast. Scotty Cameron, you so far are the #1 Spotify listener. Say thank you, Scotty Cameron.
Thank you, Scotty Cameron.
Scotty Cameron, you've consistently answered the questions, and I appreciate that. Join Scotty Cameron by answering those questions on Spotify so you can also get a shout out on the podcast. This has been The Film Realist. I am Kyle Naranya, and you are
Melody Naranya.
Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you next week or next episode.